Okay, let's set the scene. April 27th, 1937, Fascist Italy. Antonio Gramsci, the philosopher, the revolutionary, dies in a clinic in Rome. He's only 46.
Yeah, and the detail that always gets me is about his funeral or lack thereof.
Exactly. The few people there, his sister-in-law, Tatiana Schucht, his brother Carlo, were actually outnumbered by police, state security agents just watching.
A very quiet, almost muffled end after, what, more than 10 years of isolation and really terrible health in prison.
But that quietness is so starkly different from what the regime actually wanted for him. Remember the prosecutor at his trial?
Oh, absolutely. Michel Isgro, his words were chilling, weren't they? He said, and this is a direct quote, "We must prevent this brain from functioning for 20 years."
Prevent his brain from functioning. That's the backdrop for this deep dive, isn't it? Because that goal, it failed spectacularly.
Utterly failed. This is really about Gramsci's incredible intellectual fight back, how, even locked away and physically falling apart, he refused to be silenced mentally.
So our mission here is to get inside those, 3,000 pages? The prison notebooks?
Yep, 3,000 pages.
Yeah.
We want to understand how he turned that prison cell into, well, a massive systematic study zone. What were the big ideas holding it all together?
And crucially, this method, he came up with a way to really dissect and critique shallow thinking, a kind of intellectual toolkit that honestly feels incredibly relevant even now.
Definitely. It's about rigorous scholarship as a form of resistance.
Okay, so let's unpack this. His death in 37, it gets this really curt mention from the official fascist news agency, Agenzia Stefani. Just former communist deputy dies. That's it.
Right. He was known, certainly, as an anti-fascist symbol, a martyr even, because of his imprisonment since 1926 and his obvious physical suffering.
But the sheer scale of his intellectual work, the stuff that would make his lasting reputation, almost nobody knew about it then.
Exactly. The big fear among his comrades and supporters was that his genius would just be lost. That he'd become, as someone put it, largely a legend, a powerful symbol, sure, but without the actual substance of his thought.
People like Mario Montagnana, for instance, were focused on getting his earlier political articles published, right? His pre-prison stuff.
Yeah, they had no idea about the mountain of work he'd been doing inside.
Hmm.
Which brings us to Tatiana Schucht.
His sister-in-law. Her role is just immense and maybe sometimes overlooked.
Absolutely critical. You can't overstate it. She wasn't just visiting and bringing books, though she did that tirelessly. She was fundamental to the creation and then the rescue of the notebooks.
She provided the materials, the encouragement over years, and then after he dies, she has this incredibly dangerous job.
Unbelievably risky. Salvaging those 33 notebooks, nearly 3,000 handwritten pages. You have to think, these weren't just personal diaries, they were politically explosive.
And they needed to avoid, as you said, the censorious eyes of both Mussolini's regime and Stalin's security apparatus later on.
A double threat. She managed it, though. Got them into a bank vault in Rome first.
Then, with help from his friend, the economist Piero Sraffa, another key figure, she got them shipped to Moscow in the summer of 1938.
And the result is, well, Gramsci didn't just become a legend. He left this tangible, incredibly rich body of work, real books, effectively, even though he never actually finished writing a single book in the conventional sense during his lifetime.
That's such a fascinating point. His relationship with publishing before prison, he had tons of journalistic writing, enough for, 15 or 20 volumes?
Easily. And people asked him to publish collections. Professors, politicians, cultural figures like Prezzolini, Cosmo, Ciarlantini, they all offered.
And he always said no. Why?
He saw that work as fundamentally tied to the specific moment written for the day, as he put it. He felt it should have died once the day was over. It wasn't meant to be permanent. It wasn't for ewig.
For ewig, for eternity, that German phrase he picked up from Goethe. So if he actively avoided making books before, what flips that switch in prison?
It's the direct confrontation with that fascist goal to shut down his brain. It becomes an existential necessity. He decides to turn the awful emptiness, the enforced vacuity of prison, into a chance for deep, systematic study.
To create something that would last. That for you wig thing.
Exactly. It becomes his intellectual shield, his mental armor against the psychological pressure, the despair, and frankly, against that prosecutor's threat.
It's a complete shift in purpose. And he started planning this pretty much straight away, didn't he, while waiting for trial in Milan back in 27.
He did. He sketched out 4 initial big projects. And they seem, at first glance, kind of all over the place.
Yeah, what were they again? Something about Italian intellectuals?
Right. A big study on how the public spirit formed in Italy, focusing on the intellectuals. Then comparative linguistics language studies.
Okay. Then Pirandello.
Yep, an analysis of Pirandello's plays, but also what that said about broader theatrical tastes. And finally, serialized fiction, popular novels, and what they revealed about popular tastes.
Wow, that's an
So,
ambitious is an understatement. Linguistics, theater, popular culture, intellectual history. How did he see these fitting together?
that's the key insight. For Gramsci, they were all unified by this single theme, the creative spirit of the people. How ordinary people create culture, meaning, understanding, in its various phases and stages of development.
So he's looking at culture from top to bottom, high and low, and how it shapes society. This wasn't just academic curiosity, it was part of his fight.
Absolutely. It connects directly to that famous motto he adopted.
Pessimism of the intelligence, optimism of the will.
Precisely. Acknowledging the grim reality, the pessimism, but insisting on acting anyway, the optimism of the will. The prison notebooks became the ultimate concrete initiative of that intelligent will. It was his action.
I see. It was his way of doing something constructive against the destructive force he faced.
It was his intellectual offensive.
So the actual writing work starts a bit later, once he gets permission in his cell at Turri de Bari. February 1929, notebook number 1 begins.
Yes, and you see the systematic approach immediately. He wasn't just reading randomly anymore or just devouring books, as he put it. He started structured note-taking, organized reading.
He had that initial list of main topics, right? Sort of a research plan.
16 items initially. Included things we've mentioned, intellectuals, linguistics, popular culture, but also theory of history, political science, critiques of philosophy. It laid the foundation.
And then the notebooks themselves start to change structure. They evolve.
They do. The early ones, like notebooks 2 and 3, are more miscellaneous, kind of a mix of personal reflections, reading notes, ideas jotted down.
More like a diary or commonplace book.
Sort of. But then he shifts strategy. He starts creating special notebooks dedicated to specific major themes. This was crucial for organizing the sheer volume of thought.
Was this part of making it for ewig? Making it usable, understandable later?
I think so, definitely. It imposes structure.
Yeah.
Notebook 4 is the first dedicated one, Notes on Philosophy. Notebook 8 focuses specifically on that History of Italian Intellectuals project.
And some of the most famous concepts emerge from these dedicated notebooks, don't they?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Notebook 10 is on the philosopher Benedetto Croce. Notebook 13 is his deep dive into Machiavelli. Notebook 22 contains his analysis of Americanism and Fordism, mass production, modern capitalism.
The range is just staggering, but maybe the most poignant example of his discipline is Notebook 29.
Ah, yes, Notebook 29, written much later at the Formia Clinic when his health was absolutely shattered.
And what's it about?
It's titled Notes for an Introduction to the Study of Grammar. Just 9 original notes on linguistics, on grammar. But the amazing thing is, this fulfills a specific plan he laid out right back in 1927, just after his arrest.
Wow, so even when he's physically collapsing, he's still sticking to the intellectual structure he built years before. That's incredible discipline.
Shows that relentless, systematic commitment. It wasn't just about filling time, it was about executing a plan.
Which brings us to the core of what he was building. Not just facts and notes, but a critical method. A way of thinking.
Exactly. And this method is really captured in this slightly cryptic phrase he uses early on.
The one about the bone.
That's it. Cuvier's little bone. From the little bone of a mouse, sometimes a sea serpent was reconstructed. Georges Cuvier, the paleontologist, could supposedly reconstruct an animal from one bone.
Right. But Gramsci flips it. From a tiny mouse bone, someone reconstructs a sea serpent. What's he getting at?
He's attacking a specific kind of intellectual error, something he called Lorianism.
Named after Achille Lauro, the economist, but it was broader than just economics for Gramsci, wasn't it?
Much broader. He used Lorianism as a kind of shorthand for a whole cluster of intellectual sins. Crude positivism, lazy thinking, careless scholarship, forcing facts into pre-existing formulas, basically. It's building grand theories on flimsy or misinterpreted evidence.
Making sea serpents out of mouse bones, intellectual laziness dressed up as science.
Exactly. And he saw the real-world damage this could do. Look at his critique of criminologists like Cesare Lombroso.
Lombroso's school, yeah. They tried to find biological or physical proof of criminality, right?
Precisely. They'd take a few mousebone skull measurements, maybe some sociological data, and construct this sea serpent that entire groups, like Southern Italians, were inherently barbaric or prone to crime. It's a crude, deterministic way of thinking that denies people history, complexity, agency.
It strips away politics, economics, culture, and just imposes a simplistic, often racist, biological or sociological law.
And crucially, Gramsci saw this same methodological error, this Lorreanism, creeping into places you might not expect, even into Marxist and progressive thought.
Which is why he goes after Nikolai Bukharin's book so strongly. Historical Materialism, A System of Sociology. It was a really popular manual at the time.
Hugely popular. But for Gramsci, Bukharin made the same mistake as the Lorreans. He subordinated history to sociology, treating sociology like a natural science.
How so?
Bukharin presented historical materialism as a set of almost mechanical laws, like predicting the entire oak tree just from looking at the acorn. History becomes this inevitable process unfolding according to fixed, general formulas.
And the danger there is
Passivity. If history just automatically marches forward based on these iron laws, then what's the point of political struggle, of organization, of human will and consciousness? It takes the historical out of historical materialism and leaves you with a kind of fatalistic mechanism. It paralyzes the will to act.
Okay, so if Bukharin and the Lorreans are constructing these misleading sea serpents, what's Gramsci's alternative? How should we analyze the world to avoid this trap?
His answer is clear. Historical materialism needs to emphasize the historical part, not the materialism part, in a crude mechanical way. The method isn't natural science. It's philology and criticism.
Okay, let's break that down. Philology and criticism, what does that mean in practice? Sounds academic.
It sounds academic, but it's about deep, rigorous engagement. Philology means treating historical evidence, texts, culture, language with intense care. Like a scholar examining an ancient manuscript, you pay attention to every specific detail, every nuance, every context, every contradiction. You don't smooth things over.
So resisting easy generalizations. What about criticism?
Criticism is the active refusal of those universal mechanistic formulas. It's being constantly critical of attempts to explain everything with one simple law. Instead, you have to embrace the infinite variety and multiplicity of actual history. Focus on the particular, the concrete.
So it's about detailed, careful analysis of the specific situation, rather than imposing a grand, simple theory onto it.
Exactly. It's a methodology that demands intellectual humility and hard work. And for Gramsci, this was the only way to guard against both fascist ideology and the dogmatism that could infect supposedly progressive thought.
It really is an extraordinary story of resilience. His body was wrecked, he was released only because he was clearly dying, and his sentence technically expired just days before his death in 1937.
The physical toll was immense, irreparable.
But that fascist goal to stop his brain functioning, he absolutely defied it. He weaponized systematic thought from inside prison.
And the proof is in the pudding, right? The fact that those notebooks survive, that they were eventually published first thematically in Italy between 1948 and 51, then in the full critical edition in 1975. That survival itself is a testament to his will and Tatiana Schucht's courage.
He left us not just ideas, but this powerful method, philology and criticism, as a tool.
A tool for rigorous thinking.
So here's something to think about, building on that. If Gramsci saw this Lorreanism, this shoddy sea serpent building thinking, even within progressive movements back in the 1930s, well, it makes you wonder. What specific mouse bones, maybe unchallenged assumptions, popular narratives, simplistic sociological laws, are shaping our own thinking today in politics and culture, maybe even in our everyday lives? What tempts us to construct a convenient sea serpent explanation when the reality is far more complex and requires that harder work of philology and criticism?
That's the challenge Gramsci leaves us with, isn't it?
Yeah.
To apply that critical lens to our own time.
Something for you to explore using that Gramscian toolkit?